Today is going to be EQ Part 1, and we're going to talk about self-awareness. Okay, so before we get started, I do have a couple of books to recommend to you which have helped build this series over the years. The first is the book Getting Along, okay, by Amy Gallo, How to Work with Anyone, Even Difficult People, which is one of the books that I drew on for Life and Leadership 2022, okay? Very good book. Second book is Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, and this is by Daniel Goleman. And listen, this is a groundbreaking book, okay? In its 25-year run, it has sold more than 5 million copies. And this was the first book for me that broke open the topic of EQ. And really, it broke open the topic across the world about EQ 25 years ago and revolutionized the workplace. So workplace is changing today, but 25 years ago, this was the book that changed the workplace again. Okay, so I will say, however, this book is a little bit dense, so might not be the book you want to break into, okay? Now, finally, the last one is The Power of EQ, Stronger Leadership Through Emotional Intelligence. Now, this is by Karen Nutter, a renowned C-suite leadership and management coach. Okay, so this is actually a really good one for leaders to draw on, all right? Now, if you have to choose one, I would advise all of you here today, pick Getting Along, okay? Because Amy Gallo is straightforward, practical. She'll give you tools that you can immediately apply at work so you can work with people, even difficult people. And one of the things I love about this book is she actually also touches briefly, but in a very helpful way. Okay, she gives a lot of wisdom about how to navigate sexism and racism in the workplace, which, while Singaporeans like to imagine doesn't exist, does exist. And it's a really great, balanced, wise take, okay? Now, if you are struggling with EQ personally and you are a manager or in a leadership position at work, then the power of EQ is for you, okay? It's almost like a workbook with a lot of real-life case studies, and it'll help you build self-awareness in very easy, but with very great tools to help you self-regulate the way you interact with others and help you lead better, okay? So check out these 3 books. All are great reads that are going to add value to your life. Okay, so let's get started. What is emotional intelligence? Now, emotional intelligence is often known by another acronym which you are probably most familiar with, EQ, which is short for emotional quotient. EQ is the extremely important counterpart to IQ. Now, when we are growing up, right, the world around us, the education system, it puts most of its emphasis on IQ. How intelligent we are, what our grades are at school. But then, in a sudden plot twist, when we get into the working world, nobody ever complains about someone's IQ. They always complain about their EQ, the level of a person's emotional intelligence. So listen, emotional intelligence governs 4, or in some frameworks, 5 crucial areas of our lives. The first is self-awareness. Now, self-awareness refers to our ability to recognize our own emotions and strengths and limitations and their impact on ourselves and others around us. The second is self-regulation. And this is our ability to wisely manage those emotions and impulses that we've identified so that it doesn't harm our personal motivation and well-being, and it doesn't harm the well-being and personal motivation of others around us. Okay, so the third one that some frameworks put in is motivation. EQ governs our motivation in life, okay? And this is where maybe I'll add in a third message about this that might help you get through this year, through your stuckness, okay? Now, the third or fourth area EQ involves is our social awareness, aka our empathy. That is our ability to identify with and understand others and their emotions and what they are going through. And finally, for social skills, which is our ability to effectively manage relationships in a way that generates a win-win for everyone in the team. So listen, if you want to be successful in life and relationships, you have to grow your emotional intelligence. If we want to be successful at EV this year, we've got to grow our emotional intelligence. Okay, so this is a famous pyramid created by researcher Jim Collins, author of the best-selling book, one of the favorites here in TiVo, called Good to Great. And here, Jim Collins uses his pyramid to describe the different levels of people that determine whether an organization is good or great or bad. Okay, so let me read to you, right, the different levels, okay? Level 1 is the highly capable individual. Makes productive contributions through talent, knowledge, skills, and good work habits. I hope you are at least that. Level 2 is the contributing team member, okay? Contributes individual capabilities to the achievement of the group objectives and works effectively with others in a group setting. I also hope this is at least you. Level 3, competent manager organizes people and resources towards the effective and efficient pursuit of predetermined objectives. Number 4, effective leader catalyzes commitment and vigorous pursuit of a clear and compelling vision, stimulating higher performance standards. I hope this is every leader in our church. Level 5, but here we go, executive, right? And they say the greatest organizations have the most level 5 leaders. It says there, builds enduring greatness through a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will. Whew, sounds like God. Okay? So if you're ever wondering what you need to do to get promoted or progress at work, or even here at TiVo, start by referring to this chart. What you want to do is to grow from level 1 and hit level 5. Okay, but what is also really interesting is that research coming out is showing repeatedly across different industries, different companies and organizations, they found that when leaders were asked to identify the qualities needed in upper level management, they found the higher the position, the more EQ rises to the top as the most important quality. And the more IQ and technical skills falls to the bottom of qualities needed. So listen, they found IQ and technical expertise were high predictors of excellence in the lower rung jobs at level 1, maybe some of level 2. But then IQ ranked very low as predictors of excellence in leadership positions level 3 and up. In fact, one researcher in the US, Dr. Travis Bradbury, he found that 90% of top performers in the US have high EQ. EQ in the US is responsible for 58% of your job performance, not your IQ. And people with high IQ in America make $29,000 more annually than their low EQ counterparts. See, Daniel Goleman, in his book, quotes the head of one of the top global headhunting agencies as saying this: CEOs are hired for their intellect and business expertise, then fired for their lack of emotional intelligence. So listen, if you want to rise to the top, if you want to be a leader or manager or team player with significance and influence, if you want to progress and keep advancing in life, whether it's your career, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's friendships, you've got to develop your emotional intelligence. And if you are someone here who feels or has felt you are not as intelligent as someone else who went to a better school, who got a better degree, listen, don't ever let that stop you in life, because EQ is a much higher determiner of your future. And EQ, the great news is it's something you can learn. Okay? So that's great, but let's also clarify, right? What on earth does EQ have to do with God and Christianity? Well, here's what the Bible says in Proverbs, all right? So you don't have to turn for this one. I got it on the screen for you. Proverbs 1:1-4 says, "These are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right, just, and fair. These proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young." So the book of Proverbs is one of my favorite books of the Bible. It is my go-to when I need insight about what to do as a leader, when I'm trying to make a decision, when I've got a problem that needs to be solved, when I'm figuring out how to handle someone that's difficult in our team. You see, what is the point of Proverbs? This is there is to help you figure out how to be successful. That's what the intro says. And what are the key lessons that Proverbs teaches to get you to that success? Well, listen, first and foremost, Proverbs says, if you read it, number 1, it says it teaches you to fear God. to respect and obey God, to live in such a way that your values please God and you live with integrity as you move through life. The second theme in Proverbs is all about hard work and wisdom. I mean, this book goes on and on and on about the consequences of being lazy. You're sitting next to you, smile at them. Right? And the rewards of hard work and excellence. Ooh, there was a silence there. So those are two main themes that Christians tend to talk about Proverbs. But the one theme that I feel is sometimes overlooked is that Proverbs is actually all about EQ. About getting along with ourselves and getting along with people. For example, Proverbs 4:23 in the Message version says, keep vigilant, watch over your heart, because that's where life starts. Don't talk out of both sides of your mouth, avoid careless banter, white lies, and gossip. See, Proverbs links the state of your heart and your inner life, and therefore your future, with the way you speak to and about people. Proverbs 5:22-23, now in the CB version, the wicked will be caught by their own evil acts, grabbed by the ropes of their own sin. Those without instruction will die, misled by their own stupidity. I also like Proverbs because it's very blunt. You see, if we behave badly towards others, we will end up stumbling and shooting ourselves in the foot, stumbling over our own behavior. If we are too proud to be taught by anyone, we will be misled by our own stupidity. Proverbs 19:2, the Message version says, ignorant zeal is worthless. Haste makes waste. What does that mean? Passion without wisdom is useless. Emotional impulsiveness in your life will waste your time and energy. And money. Proverbs 25, CEB, advice comes from the deep waters of the heart. Those with understanding can draw it out. So as it tells us, being mentored by anyone, even the boss at your work, isn't sometimes about the quality of your mentor. It is about your ability to connect with that mentor and draw out their wisdom. What is that? Emotional intelligence. Now, if you're still not convinced, then let me break it down to the most basic. Listen, at the core of our faith, the Bible commands us to love God and love people. Right now, turn to your Bible. Let's turn to Matthew 22, verse 37-40. This is one you should all know. Matthew 22, verse 37-40. When you're there, shout back at me and say yes. Yes. Okay, here we go. So, this is what Jesus says. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You must love your neighbor as you love yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. So let me ask you this. How can we be good followers of Jesus if we don't know how to relate to God and get along with others? I mean, can you be a good Christian, technically according to this verse, if you are bad at loving people? Can you be a good human being, representative of the image of God, if you suck at relationships? I mean, think about it. All the problems in our world today, war, violence, racism, bigotry, patriarchy, extremism, polarization, fighting, quarreling, breakups, it all boils down to our inability to love well. The lack of emotional intelligence between us. So let's give ourselves a working definition for the next 4 weeks of the series, all right? So EQ, emotional quotient intelligence, refers to the capability of individuals to correctly discern their own emotions and those of others. And then, next part, to use that information to effectively manage, adjust, and adapt in order to productively collaborate and achieve goals. So, don't worry, you don't have to memorize this. There won't be a test, okay? So EQ boils down to really two aspects. Number one, yourself. Your ability to recognize and manage your emotions. Two, others. Your ability to empathize with other people's emotions and adapt accordingly to achieve the best outcome for everyone. I mean, listen, right, adults, have you ever been in a situation or interaction at work when someone, maybe even it's you, okay, are emotionally and relationally erratic? I mean, right, whatever is in front of you, the goal, the project, it becomes that much harder to reach because your anxiety, your perfectionism, your frustration gets in your own way. Because that one person in your team, whether it's one person or a clique of people or the boss and manager that is negative, argumentative, reacting, stirring drama, creating politics, it just kills the whole team's productivity. But when you have someone on the team, hopefully it's you, or better yet, the whole team, where there are people who are listening, collaborative, working for a win-win, things get done. Ideas come easy, difficult situations immediately feel better because you're in it together. That is the power of EQ. I mean, let's talk about the youth here, right? I mean, have you ever been around someone in your class who is socially awkward or overly self-absorbed and self-serving in school? Right? When it's time to be excited about something, they are negative and emo. Everyone look at me and how sulky I am. When everyone is ready to work on a goal together, this person is creating animosity out of jealousy and gossip and backstabbing. And you're like, what's wrong with you? Wasting my time. Right? So we've got to learn to have EQ because it makes our lives better. If you want to be valued and promoted at work, if you want to be sought after at higher levels of leadership, develop your EQ. Youth, if you want to be a leader in evolution one day, part of the team, develop your EQ. The ability to handle your stress, to effectively work with people. If you want to be a leader, it's not enough to be a level 1 dude, faithful, technically able. You have to develop teamwork, social skills, relational skills that make people want to work with you and follow you. Right? Remember the success pyramid we looked at the beginning? The first 2 levels, only depends on you. Your passion, your hard work, your abilities, but that can only take you so far in life. To start to conquer level 2 and all the subsequent levels, you have to be contributing. You have to be able to get on with other people. And so the higher you go, the more your EQ matters. The bigger your dreams, the more your EQ matters. See, in his book, 7 Habits of Successful People, highly successful people, Stephen Covey labels this ability as the ability to synergize. So when he talks about leadership synergy, which is, by the way, our leadership team's philosophy, leadership synergy, Stephen Covey talks about the importance of having a healthy mental and emotional state, healthy self-awareness in order to fuel your social interactions with others. He talks about the ability to listen well, to integrate, to flow with people, whether it's your boss, your colleagues, or your subordinates, so that there's productivity. You are listening well and able to win people over to listen to you as well. That is leadership. In fact, that is friendship. That is marriage. Not a title, not a ring on your finger. It is the ability to synergize with another person well. Taking care of yourself and taking care of other people. So that's why for the adults in our church, we say you got to become the right partner so you can choose the right partner. For the youth, we say you got to lead yourself well first, then you can lead other people well. EQ. Okay? So for the next 4 weeks, we'll cover 4 different things about EQ. And today, the first will be self-awareness. So what is self-awareness? Self-awareness is the foundation quality for developing high EQ. It is, I'm going to give you a very basic working definition here. It is knowing what you are feeling and why you are feeling a certain way. You see, you got to understand, right? Negative emotions are just part of the human existence. It will always be a problem in your life. You're not going to be happy and then successful. No, you're going to have to learn to manage your bad emotions, then you'll be successful. You see, anxiety, depression, worry, and fear, we all feel these things. But a big difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is our ability to be self-aware, to identify what we are feeling and why we are feeling that way. See, in the 1980s, right, there was a research study conducted to assess a group of primary school boys who tested, listen to this, with above average IQ, but were doing really badly in school. And what researchers found in common with all these boys was every single one of them had impaired prefrontal cortex functioning, which means the part of the brain that was supposed to regulate their emotions was not doing its job. And so this resulted in each boy having poor impulse control. And all of them either exhibited one or the other anxious, depressive behavior or aggressive, disruptive behavior. You see, for these boys, their intellect was not the problem, their EQ was. And so guess what? Researchers decided to follow them, right, from adolescence to adulthood. And what they continued to observe was that even if a few of these boys managed to harness their anxiety or aggression to produce somewhat better results in school, they still ended up making poor decisions in their personal lives and relationships and career, and subsequently fell greatly short of their potential. Wow. Amen? See, let me explain, right? This is how our brain functions. Specifically when it comes to making good choices in life, all right? When it comes to EQ, decision making, there are two parts of our brain that are heavily involved. One is the amygdala, which is this tiny thing right in the middle of your brain where you process emotions, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the front over here, where we process rational thought. So together in concert, these two areas create something that is called the limbic link. So when things aren't working order and these two parts of our brain are in sync and like they are getting along, right, we are actually optimized for great decision making. But if either side is compromised, that's when problems start to happen. So in another study, patients with brain damage were assessed in two different groups, okay? One group were those who had their amygdala damaged, and the other group were those who had their prefrontal cortex damaged. Now, those with amygdala damage, they immediately saw a reduction in relational ability. In a lot of cases, they even lost their desire for any relational contact altogether. They also exhibited poor impulse control in speech. They became mean, unfiltered, and they couldn't even tell that they were being hurtful to the people around them. Now, but for the second group, those who had their prefrontal cortex damaged, they exhibited an increase in relational ability. One lady, I feel like going damage some people's prefrontal cortex so that they're more relatable at work. Okay, but anyway, one lady said her husband even became more affectionate. But they also, this group, had impulse control issues. In one case, there was a man who had been put in jail for sexual harassment, only to discover 6 years later that it was because there was a tumor in his prefrontal cortex. After it was removed, he became normal again and was released from prison. Everything was fine for many years until the same behavior started to resurface, and true enough, when they MRI'd his brain, the same tumor had returned. But again, just to make sure you really understand how powerful this limbic link is, all right? Just think about this, right? You guys know dementia that happens to many seniors in their old age. Well, dementia is basically when the brain deteriorates. And where the brain deteriorates most is what determines what kind of dementia a senior citizen has. So when you see a senior citizen who has dementia, who scolds vulgarities, who was such a sweet person but suddenly scolds vulgarities and becomes mean, it's because their amygdala is diminishing. When you see a senior who becomes childlike, sweet-natured but irrational, it's because their prefrontal cortex is diminishing. So what does it have to do with you? Well, in order for you to be at your optimum in life, to have a healthy inner life and healthy relationship with others, your limbic system needs to be in order. So what scientists found is that even when people with no neurological issues, we all can experience something called neurohijacking. So when you or me struggle with EQ and interactions, let's say your friend is mean to you right in church. Just say, hey, are you having a neurohijack right now? Okay, so we all experience this, okay? So when you or me struggle with EQ in our interactions, whether it's overreacting when we are stressed, exhibiting asshole behavior after 3 years of COVID, it's because of neurohijacking. That's right, just blame it on science, right? So you see, whenever we experience a surge of emotion, our brain actually triggers a fail-safe that causes us to bypass the normal functioning of our limbic system. And what happens is, you guys all know this, we go into fight or flight response. You see, a long time ago, right, when human beings were more vulnerable out in the wild, we had to react faster to danger. If we are afraid, run. If we are in a confrontation, fight for your life to survive. Our brain needed an immediate response. Now, for those of you that struggle with anxiety at night, okay, anyone here, do you know what your anxiety at night comes from? Basically, it's not some magic thing. It's not some demon come and oppress you at 12 p.m., okay? But basically, long ago, humans were afraid to go to sleep because while they were sleeping, they could be attacked by wild animals. And so that anxious response got baked into our brainstem. And as we have reproduced, grown, we have evolved, certain parts of us have not evolved, including this response. And that is why for many of you, anxiety comes at night. Thousands of years later, we no longer need this fail-safe as much, but the old OS, fight or flight, is still there. So now, when you are confronted with a bad situation that stresses you out, that rubs you the wrong way, that brings up bad past memories and experiences with other people, if you haven't deliberately updated your OS, trained your limbic system to function correctly, you spin out. You become irrationally negative. You cannot function at optimum capacity to make good decisions. You become irrationally aggressive even, and nobody wants to work with you. So when they studied those primary school boys, right, what they found was a lot of them were in environments that did not train their impulse control. Now, before you think, all these boys must have come from impoverished backgrounds and difficult environments, listen, many of them actually came from good homes where they had been spoiled by their parents. And both scenarios resulted in poor prefrontal cortex development, poor development of their limbic link. Okay? So, the good news, however, is it's possible to strengthen and retrain our link. So what researchers found is that the first step really to self-awareness, okay, the first step, is self-awareness. The EQ is self-awareness. Specifically, having a habit, and this is across many, many literature, okay? A habit of pausing and reflecting. As simple as that, pausing and reflecting. See, that's the reason why nowadays, why mindfulness and meditation and therapy have become such big deals. Because all are forms of interrupting this neural hijack. The habit of reactiveness that we have in our brains. In fact, a habit of reactiveness that a lot of us have after 3 years of COVID. So listen, you don't have to be able to afford therapy in order to start retraining your brain. It's as simple as setting specific times in the day to pause and reflect on how you are feeling and reacting, and asking yourself, why am I reacting this way? It can be journaling. I recently just restarted a journaling habit in 2023. Every morning I get up or I'm on the bus to work, I pull out my phone and I spend 5 minutes journaling on an app. Okay, maybe you're really, really behind and maybe you need emotion wheel. Just pull out one on Google and start to journal. To develop a vocabulary for your feelings. It can be having a habit for some of us here of running or exercising, using your breath and exercise to burn off the excess energy to slow your limbic system down so that you can start to think clearly. Listen, these are simple, but they're powerful tools in your step towards building emotional intelligence. Some of you just need to eat your breakfast. You know, that's one story that I love all the time, right? Where she made this person journal at what time Karen Arthur made this guy journal at what time he always lost his temper and got into fights with people. And then she just asked him, do you eat breakfast at the time? And he said, no, so start eating breakfast and the problem was solved. Okay, we always think, right? We need to mind our mind. It's a lot of work. We've got to go to therapy and mind our mind. But really, we just need to body our mind. Do little things to change up the way we live so that we are better people to other people. You catch that? I just plugged UCH. Go check out episode 2022. Okay, can I go on? Go check that out. It's really quite helpful, all right? Go to episode 22 and you're going to learn some stuff about body and your mind, okay? So with regards to pausing and reflecting, this is the thing. Religion has always been ahead of the curve. For the Buddhists, there is meditation. For Christians, we have quiet time, contemplative prayer, the reading of scripture. Even in our charismatic worship, like for today, when we choose to push through, you know what that is? That's like the tension, the working off our energy, the praying strong. And then we drop to a quiet where we release the stress and we open our heart to hear God clearly. You see, that quiet time in ourselves gives us the ability to hear God. That time when we talk to God about our struggles, it's allowing the Holy Spirit to change our perspective, to look at things from another angle, to allow God to convict and change the way we do things, whether it's to forgive, to do better, or to be bigger. And all these, when you do them, it facilitates that first step to high EQ, that is self-awareness. The pause to reflect interrupts your neural hijacking. So when I say to you as a pastor, have you taken the time to pray? I'm not just throwing prayer at you like some instant magic pill. I hate saying that sometimes, but it's true, it works. The power of prayer is in the pause to reflect and to allow God to speak, to bring an awareness to your life and your situation and your relationships. See, in my work as a pastor, I often have to deal with people nonstop. Whether it's they are not working well with others, whether it's someone who's behaving badly towards others or to me, the problem is always self-awareness. It's always either they don't know that they are behaving badly or they don't know why they are actually upset. So very often, right, a youth or even adult, a less experienced CJ will come to me and say, this person is giving attitude. CJ, this person is so difficult to work with. I've tried, but they just won't change. With that inexperienced CGL, very often, right, it's actually not that the CGL doesn't know what their problem is. It's the CGL doesn't know how to get that person to realize what their problem is. So eventually, the person comes to my office and we sit down, and my job is to interrupt their neural hijacking. So I just go, hey, I notice you're not doing well. Why are you so angry? Immediately, they crumble. I don't know why I'm so angry. And then my next question is, did something happen? Did something happen at home? And very often with youth, it is something at home. Because at home, youth in Singapore are not allowed to be angry with their parents, most of us. Most of you have to suppress your emotion, push it down to take care of your family. But our brain doesn't work that way. You either deal with the emotion, process it in the correct way, or it will keep looping in an unhealthy way in your mind. You will take it in, you'll get more angry and more depressed, and then when you come to church or go to work, it starts to spill over into your other relationships because anger needs an outlet somewhere. And so sometimes it isn't that a youth or a person is being deliberately difficult to work with. They're not actually angry with you. They're angry with someone or something else or even themselves. And the moment they can become aware, then they can start to pray about it, talk about it, and almost immediately that person becomes easier to work with. So with adults, listen, you're the same way. When an adult is lashing out, being difficult in church or in their marriage or in their friendships, I always ask them, what are you actually feeling? And why are you feeling that way? And until they can identify and honestly admit what to the real problem, they cannot be free. Because sometimes the problem is insecurity. CJ, I feel whatever I do, I'm not good enough. Then I have to go, why do you feel that way? What happened to you that made you feel that way? Did your parents say something to you growing up? Did people make you feel that way when you were growing up? Did your boss say that to you at work? Did I say that to you? Then I go, well, no. Then where's that feeling coming from? Is that feeling logical? And they go, not really. Or most of the time, sometimes it's 20% yes, 80% no. Or the other way around, 80% valid, 20% irrational. But once you can get to an honest place, then you can reflect and come up with a solution, a way of relating that helps you forward instead of hurts you and hurts others. Sometimes our problem as adults could be ego. This is not fair. My boss is not paying attention to me. My leaders are not paying attention to me anymore. Yes, because you grew up. Oops. Yes, adults actually say that to me. Then I have to ask them, is that true that I don't love you anymore? You're not as cute as the youth in church. No, listen, you got to change your perspective. You got to ask yourself, is someone's reaction to you reasonable? Is your boss upset because you're not pulling your weight? Are your teammates upset with you because you are not pulling your weight? Or you've been treating them badly? Then maybe you need to work on that. And then there's artistic people in church. Thank God we got a pretty good team. But listen, then there's the artistic people. You're sitting next to the artistic person, look at them and say, then that's you. Right? Artistic people, you ask them to change one small thing, all the artistic people. One small thing, you hate me, you don't get me, and they start spinning out, you are controlling, you are traumatizing me. Everything you do becomes offensive and sensitive. What's the problem with artistic people? We are high self-absorption, low self-awareness. Now I can say that because I'm a recovering artistic person. Okay, so Matthew 13:21 says this. I love this verse. Jesus says, he who has no root in himself endures only for a while. When tribulation or persecution, pressure arises because of the world, immediately he stumbles. So Jesus uses this. We use this in follow-up class, and Jesus uses this to talk about our response to God's message. But listen, this third kind of ground can also be a great illustration in the principles of EQ. Specifically about the self-awareness we have about our emotions. See, he who has no root in himself, no depth of understanding about his emotions, he responds enthusiastically with high emotion immediately, right? Right, oh man, I came to this church and Jesus touched me, and then all rational thought goes out the window. Man, this is the presence of God. I want to receive Jesus into my heart. Man, TiVo is so awesome. I'm going to be loyal to this church forever and ever and ever and ever. Look, I love that. And I love when people are moved by the presence of God. I don't mean to invalidate your conversion, whether it's to Jesus or to TiVo. But without any root in yourself, in self-awareness, I find people who are too quick with positivity are as quick with negativity. And the moment something doesn't go their way in life, God doesn't care. This community is fake. They break down, they backslide because there is no root. So listen, we need to be able to pause and reflect. Wait. Why am I feeling down in 2023? Because my prayer for getting a job didn't happen, but wait a minute, I don't believe in that theology anymore. That I can just demand from God whatever I want. Am I upset because that relationship didn't work out? Wait a minute. Like, the reality of life is sometimes you don't find someone to settle down with. Is that God's fault? Do I need more experience? Do I need to get myself out there? Maybe I need to learn how to handle negotiations better at work. Then you start to go, wait. What I'm going through doesn't mean I need to backslide. I just need to keep living my life well. And to remember that I now believe in a God who is about who I am, not just what I get in life. Or some youth will come to leaders and go, and this is a very funny thing, so we're focusing on youth this year. So Alex, I'm going to give you an insight into young people. Is that okay? So sometimes, young people will suddenly come to the leaders one day, and then very dramatically goes, leader, I've been thinking about backsliding from Jesus. And we go, wait, why? And they go, I don't know, just thinking only. Youth like to give that kind of answer. But then when you probe and you ask deeper, you ask more questions, eventually, right, it slips out. They don't want to do study hours. They don't like being told, hey, you never finish your stuff on time for ministry. Or maybe they are lonely. Not enough peeps their own age in the CG who are regular in church. If they can admit it to themselves, they grow. But if they don't, then they are stuck blaming external things for internal problem. See, the person who is not self-aware, either because they are too emotional or refuse to admit it to themselves, they will always stumble because they have no root. So learn to pause and reflect. Be aware of your feelings, how you feel, and why you are feeling that way. Okay, so self-awareness is knowing what you are feeling and why you are feeling that way. But here's the second part I want to add. It is also having an accurate sense of your self-worth and your capabilities. So let me give you a great example that you all know. Everyone knows this amazing friendship, Steve Jobs, amazing partnership, Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. If you don't know, where have you been? Okay, these are the founders and leaders of Apple, all right? Now, Steve Jobs has passed away, okay? Now, Steve Jobs was a genius. Everyone can agree to that? Okay, but he will probably tell you himself, and he's not afraid to have people tell you, that he is a solid example of a leader who was hugely lacking in self-regulation, social awareness, and social skills. But to his merit, he was very high in self-awareness. So listen, this guy had terrible personality working traits, okay? Some even accused him of being a narcissist, although when I read his biography, I feel like he's probably more like, he might be on the autism spectrum, okay, versus actually narcissism. Okay, he had a great imagination, but he was a terrible perfectionist who didn't just take it out on himself, but on the people around him. He was creative and innovative, but he was obsessive and a terrible people person. But he knew it. And so this guy hired Tim Cook to be his partner. Tim Cook is a calm personality, consistent, never raises his voice. He's always smiling even when Steve Jobs is not. And that was how Apple was able to be successful and stay successful even after Steve Jobs passed away. You see, what is self-awareness? Besides being mindful of your emotions, it's having an accurate sense of who you are, your self-worth, and the limits of your capabilities. I mean, your strengths, but also your limits. Okay, so in the Bible, right, there's this partnership that I love, and it's between David and Jonathan. It's one of the greatest friendships ever written about in the Bible. Don't take my word for it. Go and read about it yourself in 1 Samuel 18 and 20, okay? So I'm just going to summarize for you. Basically, Jonathan is the firstborn son of the king of Israel, Saul. First king of Israel, all right? So he is the crown prince, and for all intents and purposes, he is supposed to be legally the heir to the throne. Now, David, his best friend, is one of Saul's generals. But what complicates this story is Saul is a bad king, and God had to send a prophet to anoint David as the next king of Israel. I mean, listen, talk about a complicated, challenging friendship, okay? You have grown up your whole life, Jonathan, thinking you are groomed to be king. In fact, he was a great man. He was a great general, great leader. He was talented. He was super brave. He had great integrity and ability despite having a sucky dad. All the makings of a great future king. But through no fault of his own, his dad sucks. He's a bad man, and God decides, I'm going to appoint your best friend to be the next king instead of you. God chooses David instead of him. Listen, this guy was so great. He didn't react. His father tried to kill David. His father was angry and jealous about this, tries multiple times to assassinate David. But each time he goes and he saves his best friend. And the Bible tells us Jonathan loved David as much as himself, and he even made a covenant with David saying, we're always going to be loyal to each other, and when you become king, just be kind to my family. I mean, this guy, completely secure in his calling. Don't need to compare to everyone. You know, he should have a right to say, I'm the next king. How dare you? But secure. Knew his limitations and his capabilities. Now, before you think, okay, this Bible character is an anomaly. He's the ideal. We're supposed to rise to his occasion. But listen, there are so many peeps in our church around you who carry the spirit of Jonathan. One of them is Ming Qian, who is one of our CUT operations ICs, now helping out on the worship team. She's also one of the leaders in the COW team. Listen, we love working with her and the TiVo team because she is someone who is self-aware. She knows her self-worth and her capabilities. Do you know Ming Qian, right, didn't have the easiest time growing up, rising up, because after secondary school, she went to ITE and then to poly. And what I found as a pastor is a lot of people who walk her path, a lot of them struggle with insecurity and jealousy, not feeling good enough, blaming other people for a good part of their life. But this girl has always been so sweet-natured and good-spirited. She's okay with her strengths and okay with her limitations. She can tell you, I may not be the one who has the best degree in the room, but I'm great at supporting my leaders and making their ideas happen. I love listening and going the extra mile to be there for youth and my friends. And that is why also she's in COW, because she goes the extra mile for our migrant friends. She is a joy to work with. Another person, let me sing his praises, who's not here today, is Raymond. Woo! Raymond, same thing. He went to poly to study engineering and he really struggled in school. But instead of spinning into depression or getting discouraged, he prayed, he heard God, he asked God to speak to him about what he's good at, and he chose to drop out of poly to go do a private diploma in sound instead. And eventually, guess what? He got a scholarship with the Esplanade, and now he's someone who has an amazing reputation at work. But back then, I remember asking him, Ray, how did you do it? Because most people I know like you were gotten angry, crumbled, backslided. Why are you still here? Why are you still confident? And he said to me, it's a choice. Sometimes the thoughts come to my mind that everyone is better and everyone is smarter, but I have to decide. Self-awareness. So listen, for all of you here, when things don't happen for you, when things didn't happen for you in the last 3 years, don't spin out of control. Instead, take time to pause and reflect, and take time to pause and evaluate. Have an accurate sense of your self-worth and your capabilities. Are there some areas maybe you need to let go of and say, this is not for me? Even if you like doing something very much, maybe you need to give it to someone else so they can shine. I'm a creative person, I am strategic, I love leadership, but part of being a good human and being a good leader to the leaders I lead is knowing when I need to hand over stuff and let others who can do a better job do it instead of me. Now, before you think, oh man, but that's just rolling over, maybe Minxie and Raymond just gave up and they say, I'm just not as talented, it's okay lah, so let them do lah, I'll just stand in the background. Listen, there are days where I've gone to them and said today, Minxie, I need you to grow in this area. You're starting to become too negative. I need you to be more positive about your life and do something about your frustration. Hey Ray, this was great at this level, but I need you to come up to the next level so you don't let the rest of the team down. And they have to rise to the occasion. So listen, what areas of your life do you need to grow in order for you to advance in 2023? Maybe it's being more confident in a crowd and speaking up to take the lead. Maybe it's listening more and talking less. Maybe it's being honest that when you are in a bad mood, you take it out on other people. Maybe it's making an effort to play better in a team. Maybe it's realizing that the same behavior you accuse others of, you do as well. Maybe your anxiety or your ego is getting in the way of your success. See, self-awareness is having an accurate sense of your self-worth and your capabilities. Is there some area of your life that needs work? Pause, then reflect. Pause and evaluate. So turn me to 4:20. Is that okay? Proverbs 4:20. One more verse. We're nearly there, okay? We're nearly there. Stay with me, all right? Proverbs 4:20. It says there, my son, pay attention to my words. Bend your ear to my speech. Don't let them slip from your sight. Guard them with your mind. They are life to those who find them and healing to their entire body. More than anything you guard, protect your mind, for life flows from it. See, it's interesting, right? Proverbs 4 tells us twice, guard your mind. And how do you do that? You do that by pausing to reflect. By letting positivity and rational thought bring light and healing to your soul. You do that when you pause and evaluate and you pay attention to God's voice of conviction, to the words of your mentors and leaders, to your friends' voices of reason. You start to get a healthier sense of who you are and what you are capable and what you need to change. That is how we guard our minds and we change the course of our life. Amen? But finally, I want to say this. For all our talk on self-awareness, right? This is not a self-help seminar. Only, okay? The most powerful weapon you have to become self-aware is your God. See, Proverbs 16:1 says there, I love this, we can gather our thoughts, but the Lord gives the right answer. Let me say one more time. You can gather your thoughts, but God gives the right answer. Do you know the studies actually show people who are spiritual and pray regularly are 7 times more likely to be emotionally healthy? Do you know that other scientists have found that the Christian practice of praying in tongues actually lights up the self-actualization part of your brain and brings clarity to your mind in a way that even meditation and exercise cannot accomplish? So this is my personal religious belief. The prayer is the most important pause to reflect and evaluate you can make for your life. See, we talked about Jonathan, right? Now let's take a moment to talk about David, is that all right? You know, how did David do it? How did he remain so faithful to God and become such a successful king? I mean, think about it, right? He was persecuted, rejected by his family and brothers. Nobody believed in him. He was persecuted by the king he served loyally. He tragically lost his best friend, Jonathan, in war. And he spent so many years on the run alone with a bunch of rejects and misfits who were difficult to lead. And somehow, he survived the pressure. Somehow, he kept his heart and integrity. Somehow, he became king. And you know what? When he became king, he also at one stage of his life made some terrible, terrible mistakes. They became really public scandals. But somehow, this guy humbled himself, took it, and changed and continued walking. You know, how did David have so much resilience in his emotions? How did he stay, such self-awareness and mastery over his inner life? I believe the answer is he prayed and he worshipped. The Bible depicts him as the greatest worshiper of all of God's heroes and heroines. And this is one of the many prayers he wrote. Psalms 139:23 says there, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life." See, I think David had this ability to be completely open with God. To whatever challenge and mistake he made, he would pause and he would pray. To say, "God, search my heart. Test me. Know my anxieties. Know my prejudices. Help me to know, when I'm being proud, when I'm being insecure, so that I can be led along the path to life." So you know what? My biggest challenge as a leader and mentor with people is helping people to succeed in life. The biggest challenge, it's never been training. That's easy. It's never been curriculum. That's easy. It's never been admin and mobilization. That's easy. The problem is helping someone to find self-awareness in their life. When I can't teach someone or find some way to teach someone to pause and to have habit of pausing, to invite God's presence into their life, I can't turn them into a great leader. I can't make them a great success. The difficulty is always helping someone to find a root in themselves and a habit of self-awareness. So today I want to ask you, right, guys, is there something that you're anxious about, still depressed about over and over again? Is there something you're offended by? Something that you've been aggressive about, whether it's in church, at work, in your family? Do you have a EQ problem that's damaging your relationships, that's separating you from God, separating you from people, and separating you, therefore, from your future opportunities? I want to encourage you, right? Start making David's prayer your prayer this year. We say one more time, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path to everlasting life."